Our faith teaches us that Jesus is fully divine and fully human, and both those traits were on display in the last hours of his life. His humanity was pushed to the very limit of human endurance. He got no sleep after the Last Supper, where he instituted the first Eucharist and made the apostles his priests and said, "Do this in memory of me." He went to Gethsemane, sweating tears of blood while the apostles slept, waiting for Judas and the centurions to come and carry him away. And he spent that night between Holy Thursday and Good Friday being shifted around from one place to another, from one jail and one trial to another. By the morning, with the coming of the dawn, the die was cast. The plot was complete. Jesus was sentenced to die. It was 9 a.m. when he sets out for the cross. It took him a long time to get there because he was so weak by the scourging he endured in the pre-dawn darkness. Simon of Cyrene was pressed into service to help him to make it to Calvary. It's noon when Jesus is lifted up on the cross, nails in his wrists and his feet. He will live for only another 3 hours. Normally, people could survive for days, if not weeks, when hung upon a cross. But Jesus was within inches of death even before he made it to Calvary. It was a real struggle for him to speak. With his hands and all of his body weight hanging from those nails, he had to struggle to lift up his body to take in enough air even to breathe, let alone to utter words. But Jesus had some parting thoughts, and struggling for every breath with his lungs filling with blood and water, he did speak 7 times from that cross, telling the good thief, "You'll be with me in paradise," forgiving those who put him there. But the last words that Jesus speak from the cross in Luke's gospel are most important for our reflection here in this Palm Sunday, when he said in Luke chapter 23, verse 46, "Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit." Why did Jesus, just before he died, quote a psalm that was written 1,000 years before the crucifixion? Perhaps it was to let his disciples know, who are watching from a distance in horror as these events unfolded, that this was all part of God's plan from the very beginning. That from the time David wrote those Psalms, from the time Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, God had always planned that where sin began, at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, sin would be conquered on the tree of the cross. But what does it mean to commend something? "Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit." It means to give something to someone. Quoting that psalm, Jesus was letting his listeners know his life was not being taken from him, not by those who betrayed him, not by those who sentenced him to death, or even by those who hammered those nails through his hands into that cross. Jesus was giving his life to God for us, giving his life to God to fulfill the Father's plan for our salvation, giving his life to God for us that our sins might be forgiven, that we might become forgivers, that we could be reconciled with God and with each other, to have a second chance here in this life and a chance to live forever when we find happiness in heaven. The challenge for us is that the church gives us Lent and Holy Week once each year to sacrifice and suffer along with Christ, who suffered so greatly for the love of us. And for the most part, because we've heard these things so many times, perhaps we just take it all for granted. We've heard it all before, in one ear and out the other. But each year, the church issues an urgent invitation for us not to become passive spectators to the passion of the Christ, but to place ourselves in the midst of all of it and figure out what part would we play. If Jesus was sweating tears of blood, praying that he might have the strength and the stamina to drink from the cup of suffering, would we be asleep like the other apostles, or would we follow Jesus' own advice when he told us to be awake and alert, for death would be coming for us like a thief in the night? Would we find ourselves by our sins betraying him, by our selfishness abandoning him or denying him? Or could we be a Simon of Cyrene, helping Jesus to carry that burdensome cross, because in every darkness and difficulty of our life, he has helped us to carry ours? Well, in the days ahead, we'll find out. We will find out, listening attentively to the depth and the breadth of God's love for sinners, and the depth and the breadth of the lengths to which God will go to save us and set us free.